I was 36 when I started working at a respectable law firm. The man in charge knew my father from years prior, so that was pretty much my way in. As soon as I entered the building, I met a female attorney that won my heart way faster than should have been possible. She had curly blonde hair and big blue eyes. It was like I was speaking with a model from 1955. We started seeing each other outside the law firm 2 months after I started. I was thrilled that she wanted to go out with me. We had a wonderful time together, filled with laughter after fun. A year later, she became pregnant, and it was the happiest news I ever heard. However, her face looked mortified, and she even said this wasn't good. I suddenly realized she was probably very career-driven, so I assured her she wouldn't have to stop being a lawyer, just take a long break and return to it. We still hadn't moved in together, but now that she was pregnant, I wanted her to. When I asked, all the color left her face. She said she couldn't and wouldn't tell me why at first. Then she said she took care of her elderly mother at home, so she couldn't move out, but she also didn't think her mother would approve of a child being there. I was confused because grandmothers usually love grandkids. She also never told me she lived with anyone. Another thing struck me funny, but I just couldn't place what it was. Somehow, I knew her story wasn't true. I asked if I could go with her to tell her mother the good news and introduce myself. She got sick right there, but blamed morning sickness. She said she'd rather handle this herself. I was pretty upset and uneasy. I wanted this child more than anything, but she seemed inconvenienced and distant from me. She didn't answer any of my calls over the weekend, so I started to fear she met some horrible end, but there she was at work on Monday. I rushed to her side and asked why she hadn't answered my calls. I wanted to know what was really going on. Finally, she broke down and she told me she was married. As the thought sunk in, the room spun and I fainted. When I came to, I was laying on a bench in the law firm. My girlfriend was there. Right away, she told me her relationship with her husband wasn't that great, which is why she started seeing me. I sat straight up and asked her if she planned on getting a divorce. She hesitated. I didn't think it was because she had feelings for this guy, but because of the image she tried to present, and maybe she enjoyed the home and routine they had together. I couldn't bear to think she still loved this guy or was still having sex with him, but that's exactly what it was. She went home and told her husband that night that she was pregnant with his child. He is ecstatic and posts it on the internet. I found the post and sent him a message. I explained that his wife had been seeing me since a little over a year prior, and she knew this baby was mine. I sent him pictures of us together. After that, he demanded that she comply with a DNA test. During the time it took for that to come back, we both distanced ourselves from this woman. She was apparently willing to lie and cheat. She was miserable and even asked me if she could sleep over. I told her no, even though it was hard to say that. I knew I could find a woman that was honestly single and wanted to build a life with me. The DNA test results revealed that I was not the father. Her husband was. I didn't realize until the results came in that I didn't want to be a father yet, especially not with her. So, I was obviously keeping my distance from her and told her so. Her husband filed for divorce, even though it was his child, because there was confusion about it in the first place. She lost everything since he was able to prove her infidelity with my pictures and the whole reason for a DNA test in the first place. After she was divorced, she drove the small moving truck with her stuff to my house as a last-ditch effort to get my forgiveness. When I answered the door, she told me I went to great lengths to free her from her husband so that she could move in with me, and now the day is finally here. I just laughed. I said no way. I just wanted her husband to know she was a cheating skunk and if she was carrying my baby. Since she wasn't, we had no reason to keep in touch. I slammed the door hard. I was hurt and mad. She was lovely, and we could have been together had she gone about this the right way. Now she had no one. She tried to call or message me every day while she searched for a place to live. I wasn't invested in her story, but I was receiving updates and hate from her. She didn't seem to realize it was her own decisions that got her into this mess, and it shouldn't have been so hard for her to find her own place. She had money from her job, but she didn't want to live alone or be a single mother. The last thing I told her was that I didn't trust her to be my girlfriend, but someone else would, and when they did, she needed to be honorable and earn their trust. I also said that she shouldn't be as worried about finding a man as she should be about being a capable and prepared mother. The last thing she told me was that she should have divorced her husband and done things the right way before starting to date me. She regrets it every day and wonders where we would have gone in life. Opie, I am so sorry your girlfriend started dating you and continued dating you for a year without mentioning her husband or living situation. It's devastating to me that she dragged you through this roller coaster of a relationship, but I am relieved it didn't go on for very long. You're extremely fortunate to not have been the father of the child, because then it would have been even harder to keep your distance from her. She didn't deserve anyone's trust, that's for sure. It was good of you to track down her husband and message him. She probably would have lived out the lie that this man fathered the child, even if he hadn't. This woman seems to have learned her lesson, but thankfully that's none of your concern anymore. Now with this second chance, you can find a woman that's honest from the start and really willing to dedicate herself to you. Thank you for sharing with us. Let's now get into our second story for today. My girlfriend and I were together for 4 years. We met after both of our apartments flooded, and we were put in neighboring hotel rooms. She had an upstairs apartment, and I had a downstairs one. Since we were both evacuated and forced to take a little getaway, we got to talking and found it hard to turn in for the night. I invited her to hang out in my hotel room and watch a movie, so she agreed. We talked the whole time and realized we were neighbors for 2 years and just didn't cross paths very often. We might have only seen each other twice in all that time. I also learned that she was quite lonely like me. She was recently divorced and never had children. I had a daughter that I didn't get to see very often since she lived with my ex-girlfriend. I could tell she cared about me and it bothered her that I had a child I couldn't see very much. Once the apartments were fixed, we started visiting each other every day for one reason or another. The first time she came over and asked for sugar. The second time I asked for salt. She invited me in and asked if I dated. I said I wasn't very eager to be rejected by a woman I could easily love. That's the first time we made love and consequently began dating. This went super well for 2 years. We went roller skating, skiing, to the movies, to plays, to clubs, boating, and more. So much that I can't even remember, but it was a wonderful time. Then we decided she should move into my apartment to save on rent. She said she would love nothing more than to live with me and share a life together. It went really well for the first 6 months. During the last 6 months, she started to get really quiet. She didn't feel like having conversations with me anymore or telling me what was on her mind. Whenever we talked, it turned into a stupid argument. She started to treat me like I was stupid and she was always right. I continued going on walks with her, but it wasn't hand in hand like we used to walk. She would look around and create chit-chat with any neighbors and let me keep walking. She started waving at anyone that would drive by, which was more attention than even I was getting. One day when we were out, a tall man was standing outside our building smoking. I recognized him from before. I knew he lived in our building, but I didn't know his name or where he lived. My girlfriend started talking to him about his shirt that had a well-known television show on it. I stood there while she chatted away with this guy, and it seemed like long enough. I told her I was going back to the apartment, hoping it would make her come along too. She told me to go on without her. I was extremely upset by this. I said I wanted her to come along, but she just said she wanted to keep chatting with her new friend. I was highly annoyed now, but I wasn't going to leave her alone with this guy. I felt like she wanted me to let her go so that she wouldn't have to break up with me. I sat down and told her I'd wait for her. It quickly became awkward, but the conversation drummed on and on. This guy was interested in her and amused that I wanted her to leave him, but she wouldn't. Finally, I had to pee, so I went into the apartment. I came back 2 minutes later, and they were gone. I started screaming her name in frustration. A different woman peeked out and recognized me. She asked if I was okay, and I asked her if she knew where the tall guy lived. She hesitated, but she said she thought he lived in 215. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. I sat in front of the door until it opened 2 hours later. It was my girlfriend. She was shocked I was still waiting there and actually scolded me, saying she had enough and wanted to break up. I snapped and said if she felt that way, all she had to do was tell me, not lead me through this emotional torment. She said she was nervous to tell me, since she'd just gone to all the trouble to move in. I asked her if she was talking about all the trouble I went through to move her in. I moved the furniture she wanted downstairs, and more importantly, made room in my heart for her. I allowed myself to trust her. I told her I took her in because I believed she loved me and wanted to be with me. She rolled her eyes and said this conversation was the exact reason she'd been avoiding me and went with another man. She said I was boring, but she didn't realize it until she lived with me. We stopped going out as much, and she didn't like how much I watched television. I told her she would never be content in a relationship as long as she lives, because it's about communication and improving life together. If she was bored, I didn't know that. I was living how I normally would, but with someone I loved. I felt like everything was fine. Instead of fixing the beautiful start we had, she doubted me. I told her to find another place to stay tonight, so she knocked on AP's door and he let her in. I was infuriated. I went inside my apartment and started carelessly bundling up all of her junk. I know I broke at least 2 things, but I didn't care. Let that be a representation of what she did to my heart. I had her stuff by my front door, but I wasn't sure if I should throw it away. All I could think about for the next 3 days was that I was going to have a hard time trusting anyone else, ever. That evening, she knocked on my door. I answered it and started putting her stuff just outside the door. While I did this, she sheepishly asked if she could stay in the apartment tonight. She was embarrassed to admit that AP didn't want her to stay in the apartment anymore. I laughed and slammed the door. I proceeded to watch her take all her stuff to the parking lot and sit on the curb. She waited a long time before someone came to pick her up. I assumed it was a member of her family that I never met, since she seemed to be expecting them and they helped her get her stuff into the vehicle. I haven't seen her since. Since then, she's reached out to me a few times pleading for forgiveness, but I just ignore it. As far as I'm concerned, she's history. OP, it sounds like your ex lives off the thrill of starting relationships, but once the magic settles, she bails because the long haul takes compromise and communication. She liked the thrills and adventure, getting to know each other, but once all was learned, she wanted someone new. It's extremely disappointing when someone gives the impression that they're capable of commitment and selflessness, but fails as soon as the other person trusts them fully. I believe the only way to avoid this is to date someone slowly, frequently, and honestly communicate, develop a friendship, and simply to the best you can to build rapport with this partner. It's not wrong to test them sometimes to see if they're trustworthy. As a matter of fact, if it's well thought out, it can help greatly. Don't be afraid to let a new partner know that you're nervous to trust them. A good person would understand and be more than willing to show you they deserve your trust. The only other thing to do is keep moving forward no matter what unexpected thing happens. I wish you the best of luck in life and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, Comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel Relationship Haven. In today's story, Opie found out his girlfriend cheated on him with a coworker, then ran off with her affair partner. Now, recently Opie's father passed away from cancer, and his cheating girlfriend has the nerve to want to show up at his dad's funeral with her affair partner. Opie then exposed her motive to people around them, friends and family, as well as the internet, and now her reputation has been completely destroyed. Let's get into today's story to find out what happened. A little background. I met her 5 years ago. We have been together for the last 3 of those years. The first 2 were spent just casually dating. I love this girl. We did have arguments a little more frequently lately, but that's because of my insecurities lately. See, about a year ago, I was going through a death in the family and I wasn't able to be there for her. We decided to take a break for a few weeks, a mutual decision, and for me to get my head on straight. We talked often during these weeks, nothing deep, as we wanted to give each other space. Weeks after we got back together, I found out she started flirting with a coworker. They went out a couple of times. She went down on him, too. She also showed me the texts. We worked through it, but I've always felt insecure as they see each other every day. A few days ago, we had a fight. We had made plans, and she canceled the day of. She has a habit of doing so last minute, and it annoys me, but whatever. So later, we talked, and I asked how her day was, etc. She sent me a few pictures, and I see a restaurant in the background. When we met later, I asked her about who she was with, and she didn't exactly answer, but after taking it upon myself to look through her texts, I saw a conversation with the same coworker talking about having lunch together at a very unique type of restaurant, the same type that was in the background. I was so mad. I asked if it was him, and she repeatedly said no. I left and went home. I woke up and saw I was blocked everywhere. I decided not to bother her as we both needed time to calm down. Today, I decided to look at her Facebook page through someone else's account. It said she's in a relationship. The coworker's account said the same. For context, when we were together, she never once put in a relationship, but I didn't care. It's only Facebook. Suddenly, her and the coworker who showed single are now both in a relationship. I've messaged her friends and everyone she knows, but no one is responding. What do? I can't work. I can't eat or sleep. If she broke up with me, I'd be okay, but she chose to do it in such a way. I need answers. I need someone to tell me what's going on. I feel like I'm starting to come off as a crazy person, but what am I supposed to do? Update. It's been over a week since I found out my ex-girlfriend and best friend of 5 years had been having a long-term affair with her coworker. She ghosted me when I found out. First things first, you people saved my life. I admit I was having very dark thoughts during those first few days, and the words and sentiments of you folks helped me trudge along. I finally told my family and friends. Some of them already knew as our friend group was sort of blended after 5 years. To say my mother was hurt was an understatement. She loved my ex and thought I would marry her. I had taken your advice and just went completely silent. I purged my house of everything that reminded me of her, everything she got me or left here, packed it in boxes, and asked one of my friends to deliver it to one of hers. I wanted to be proactive. When my friend got back, he told her friend and earful about how I had been treated. I didn't ask him to. Apparently, she was apologetic. She supposedly didn't know my ex cheated. Yeah, right. I think she just doesn't want to look bad now that it's coming out. The ex is a cheater. No way she didn't know, but whatever. Yesterday, a blank random Facebook account messaged me. It was my ex. Here's what she said. Hi, I got the stuff from Talia. I get you're probably mad at me. I get that I messed up by not breaking up sooner before things happened, but I think it's really cruel of you to tell people our business and even return things I got you as gifts. They were meant for you. There was no reason to be so ugly about everything. This is exactly why I did not say anything. I really think me just disappearing will help you move on faster. There's no reason for it. One day I hope we could both look back on our relationship fondly as something that helped us become better people. I hope you can reach that point in yourself. I ignored the message and then blocked her. I've got my appetite back. I still have moments where I just can't help but break down, but I feel anger more than anything else. I'm burying myself in work, and most of my interactions with people involve a good deal of faking it, but I'll get there someday. What worries me is my anger. Here's another update. A few days ago, my dad passed away. Somehow, my ex found out. On social media, I have received such an outpouring of support from and some of them are friends with her friends. My friends already know not to talk to me about her or share anything about me with her or her friends. My mother is broken. My ex, who has been blocked by my mother and family, decided to text my mother her condolences. She went so far as to imply that being the caring person she is, she'd like to offer my mother her support and attend the funeral. Guess who with? If you guess the affair partner, then you're right. Why? Because she will support her while she's supporting my mother. This sucks because my mom loved her and they were close until she cheated. My mom didn't even bother responding. She just told me what happened, told me she doesn't want her there or to reach out again, and will leave it to me to handle it because she doesn't want unnecessary drama after all this. Now, I have no choice but to confront her. I also know confronting her is giving her exactly what she wants. She'll be able to say I'm the one reaching out to her. What should I do? What should I say? I have not dealt with it yet, but I plan to. Here's yet another update. First of all, thank you all so much for your condolences. I'd have loved to answer each one of you individually. Thank you all from the bottom of my and the family's hearts. I took all your advice into consideration. At the end of the day, regardless of the harsh way I personally want to put my ex in her place, I think I see things my mother's way. I don't want any sort of conflict or ill will or cruel words spoken about the circumstances in which I'm putting Dad to rest. I just want peace until after the funeral. I decided I'll not respond to her in any way. I've also spoken to my family through the group to tell them about what happened. Understandably, many were angry and wanted to rip her a new one. I pleaded with them to restrain themselves and that we needed to stand in solidarity and agree we all will meet her attempts with complete silence. I got all of them to agree that if she reaches out to them, we'll just ignore and block as many times as necessary. We won't even acknowledge she exists. Everyone's so protective of me now, so there's a new unity to the family that's really humbling. I'll speak to the funeral personnel about the ex to make sure in case she does show up, she'll be turned away. I'll go to the police station tomorrow to at least inform them just in case. Maybe they can advise me as well. If a restraining order is my only recourse, I'll take steps in that direction. Lastly, when I told my friends about it, they weren't surprised. Turns out my ex is posting about being devastated by the loss of my dad and is soaking up the pity like a leech. My friends had already agreed amongst themselves to keep this under wraps, to not stress me out. They volunteered to be spokesmen and spread the word to literally everyone that she isn't welcome and that we'll have security to keep her out if need be. They'll also run interference for me the whole day. I was really touched. Right now, my priority is making sure my mom isn't affected by anything else. I'm staying with her until the funeral. She's a really religious woman, so she doesn't want to be too harsh with the ex and says she's forgiven her or is trying to, so the best she can do is continue to just ignore her. I'll update after the burial. Here's my final update. My dad's funeral service was beautiful. One of his close friends asked if he could put up the time and location on his social media so my dad's friends out of state could see and attend, and they did. Fortunately, I did not hear a peep from my ex in the days leading up to it, and I didn't care to. Her parents did attend, though. They didn't stay long, and they mostly spoke with my mom, but I hovered around her the whole day just in case. Not a word was mentioned about my ex. They were cordial with me, and I didn't get the sense they were unhappy with me, but they had the tact not to talk about anything else. It was sweet, honestly. In the last few days, I've gotten a few friend requests from people in my ex's camp, but I ignored it. Yesterday, my friend, same guy I asked to return her stuff, showed me a message from Talia that is basically spewing hate my way. Talia, her friend, said that I'm immature, pathetic, and trying to make my ex's life miserable. I asked them to extract what this was all about, and she sent me a screenshot of a YouTube video shared by one of our friends to her. It didn't take long for it to reach my ex, and wow, out of curiosity, I decided to accept one or two of the friend requests, and this is what happened. I've gotten pages of my ex calling me abusive for not having the courage to face the woman I'm besmirching, but dragging her name through incel echo chambers, and that I not only denied her the opportunity to say bye to my dad, but talked openly enough about her private business that it's trickling into her workmates' conversation. She then said that as if that isn't bad enough, I'm psychologically attacking her by encouraging strangers on the internet to bash her. Her accusations honestly got under my skin, and I responded only to ask what about the post wasn't true. I tried to explain that I first made the post in a moment of immense emotional upheaval and panic, and I just needed advice from people who suffered through the same, and that I did not reveal anything to expose her or myself to strangers, but she was adamant. I was told my ex apparently cried when she heard some of the comments and said that her new boyfriend wants to settle things with me. He wants me to reach out to my ex and apologize to her. I'm tired, honestly. I don't care about talking to her, and I honestly don't think I have to justify making an anonymous post on Reddit to sort through what was a difficult time for me. What struck me most is that the cousin, who I honestly feel was in contact with the ex while talking to me, was more offended at what commenters said than what I did. She couldn't pick out a single thing I lied about, not one. Thank you all for the support you have given me these last few months. This community has been among my most resolute supporters, giving me strength with your own stories of betrayal and perseverance. Even some of the harsher advice was incredibly useful to me. I truly believe if I had every last one of you in my ear a year ago, I'd have been spared so much pain that I now believe in part was self-inflicted. You're the best. Wow, Opie. The entitlement that your ex has is unbelievable. The fact that she felt the need to show up at your dad's funeral means that she must be a full-blown narcissist. If I were you, I would continue to ignore her and try your best to move on from this situation. If anything, consider the fact that she found out her story was exposed on the internet as a good thing. Hopefully, it can help her narcissistic mind realize the disaster she has created and will for once feel an ounce of remorse. I wish you all the best, Opie. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care. My girlfriend was a very superficial girl. She was going to a beauty school to become a hair and makeup artist. I was going to school to become an engineer. I didn't think any less of her for what her career choice was. She was lovely and charming, like Snow White, and cared about the people she encountered. At least, that was what she let me see of her. I took her to a family reunion after we dated for a year, and my mom got some one-on-one time with her in the kitchen. She reported back to me, telling me to dump this girl as fast as possible. I was shocked by the impression she got, and thought my mom was crazy when she told me my girlfriend was extremely rude, selfish, and inconsiderate. I just didn't see what she saw, so I couldn't bring myself to break up with her. She kept surprising me at my dorm with food, movie rentals, or games to play. She also looked forward to any chance I got to take her out clubbing. Usually, I was busy dedicating myself to my studies. I knew my college education would require sheer determination, strength, and focus. Graduation means I wasn't distracted by a woman, or, God forbid, getting one pregnant. I knew my girlfriend didn't want to conceive, but she swore she could time her cycle, so there were a few times she persuaded me not to wear protection. One night, my girlfriend tried really hard to convince me to take her out to a venue that had live music and cheap drinks. I told her I couldn't and maintained my resolve. She got pretty upset with me, and I saw her face fade from smiling and adorable to a resentful frown with piercing eye contact. She left without another word, but it made me mad because she strutted out with her angry supermodel walk. It seemed obvious she planned to go without me, which made it impossible for me to focus on studying. I drove to the venue 30 minutes later and spotted her on the dance floor with another man, surrounded by sweaty people. I watched her and kept my distance while I had a drink. I was curious to see the side of her that my mom warned me about. I didn't believe she'd be so low to cheat on me. She valued me as her man and admired my mind. I thought she wanted a secure and happy future with me. What I saw proved the opposite. She was acting like the most gorgeous and newly single woman in the place. It was only a short time before she let the man she was dancing with lead her back to the bar, where they did one more shot before leaving together. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I followed his car while he drove poorly and failed to notice my tailing him. I parked just about 200 feet behind them, so I saw them go into his apartment. I knocked on the door 20 minutes later after deciding it was what I wanted to do. No one answered, even though I know they heard me. Eventually, he answered the door, and when my girlfriend saw me, she tried to look happy and calm. She said this wasn't what I thought it was, that he was actually her gay stepbrother, and they hung out sometimes. He looked at her like she was crazy. She shoved past him to leave with me and closed the door in his face. We started walking away, but AP didn't want to play along. He felt used and embarrassed. He opened the door again to shout that he was sorry for sleeping with my girlfriend, and she told him she was single. I pulled away from her, and she just kept saying that it wasn't true. I told her that even if she didn't sleep with him, I knew he wasn't her gay stepbrother, and I saw the way she danced with him at the club. That was enough for me to believe what my mom said about her. She said I was being unfair because she claimed to be innocent, but I refused to be made a fool for trusting her after this weird night and my mom's warning. I left her there, right by AP's house. She posted dramatic things about me on Facebook, that I left her in the nowhere in the middle of the night, and that I accused her of cheating when she wasn't that kind of person. I felt a little helpless about all the bashing, but I ultimately didn't care because I knew who I was and what I wanted to become. I went back to my studies and forgot all about my ex-girlfriend. To my surprise, just 4 months later, she posted on Facebook with the happy news that she was expecting. 1 hour later, she was publicly freaking out because AP dumped her and accused her of cheating. Apparently, AP couldn't have children, so he knew he was not the father, even though my ex tried to claim he was. It was a huge mess, and I'm glad I got out of the whole situation when I did. My mom was relieved too. Years later, I'm working as an engineer, and my ex is a single mother of two that never obtained her cosmetology degree. Opie, I am sorry your girlfriend proved herself to be a selfish and manipulative woman. You dodged a bullet, thanks to your mother's warning and girlfriend's telling behavior. It worked out really well to follow her that night, and it was the only time you had to, because you were too smart to be playing these games. She was extremely immature, and it worries me to think about all the men she'll probably trick into loving her. Unless, through some miracle, she learns her lesson and becomes a trustworthy woman. Now she has her kids to consider and put above her own desires. Sometimes it takes a shocking life mistake like this to realize the world doesn't bend to your wishes, and you'll get yourself into a bad place if you think selfishly or take advantage of others. Thank you for sharing your story. Now, let's get into our second story for today. I, 41, didn't realize that my wife, 35, was talking to several other men behind my back. The man she talked to the longest paid her for pictures and videos when we were struggling financially. We had 3 kids, one of them nearly an adult, and we were married for 10 years. After she felt like she could get away with talking to AP behind my back, she started making up stories for places she had to go to. One night she told me she was going to get her hair done, and she did, but it took a long time. Another time, this could have happened many times. While I was at work and the kids were at school, she spent the day with him. He was like her sugar daddy. I didn't know she was sneaking out or doing anything behind my back until I got a call from a married woman we were both friends with for about 7 years. She was crying and said she just found out her husband was cheating on her. I was shocked to hear this and told her I was so sorry. I was shocked because when I spent time with her husband, he told me how much he loved his wife. I recalled one time we were alone together and he spoke highly of his wife and then asked me how my wife felt, but then he corrected himself to how I felt about my wife. Right after this memory, she told me my wife was the one sleeping with him. I instantly understood why she was calling me. I had a vision of my heart plopping onto a platter and a fork stabbing it, then a knife cutting into it. I asked her how she knew, and she said she was holding her husband's phone at that very moment. He forgot it when he said he was going to meet some friends. She tells me she was looking at their messages right now, and he lied. He was going to meet my wife at a book club. Hearing her mention the book club made it all too real. That was definitely my wife's thing. She would go every week, but she never invited me to go. I wasn't much of a reader. AP's wife sent me pictures of what was going on while I drove to the book club. These messages mentioned times they had sex, things they wanted to do, and risk pictures. They were all about to get a rude awakening. I busted down the door and found 8 women, all intently and dreamily listening to AP, the only man in the room, reading a romance novel out loud. My wife was wrapped around his arm with her head on his shoulder. The room gasped and looked at me when I walked in. My wife jumped straight to standing, and AP looked like his worst fears were realized. I looked him dead in the eye and said his wife knew what he was doing. He could only say no, but I said yes and added that she sent me the messages between him and you. I pointed to my wife, then AP ran out the door. My wife covered her mouth, and all the other women stared with gaping mouths as this unfolded. I told her she made a vow to me 10 years ago and gave birth to my children only for our marriage to end like this. My voice cracked and tears started flowing. I told her she ruined 2 marriages and I never wanted her to come back into my home again. She very quietly said that this didn't have to happen because she was sorry and learned her lesson. I told her I didn't give a crap if she learned her lesson. That would only benefit her future, but now I had to pick up the pieces of my own life, the life that she gave up for another man. Then I left. One of the women chased me down and handed me a little piece of paper with her phone number on it. All the other women started whispering and awkwardly leaving, itching to spread the word around town about the book club breakup. As soon as I got home, I realized this building didn't feel like home anymore, just a grave of the life I was living. So I packed up the kids and everything I could over the next few days and with my brother's help, moved into my parents' house 3 hours away. This was what I needed to do while I divorced my wife and got financially situated to the point where I could buy a new home. Meanwhile, AP was divorced and moved in with my ex. They probably thought everything was going to be okay for them until they were both ordered to pay child support. But that's not all. AP found out just a few weeks later that he wasn't my wife's only lover, and after some thought, she decided she could do better than him. She moved out, leaving him broke and the sole person living in our old marital home. She moved in with some dangerously rich man. She was treated pretty well there at first, and they actually decided to have a baby together. However, while the paint was drying in the nursery, My wife's new husband cheated on her. Then he wanted the new woman to be his wife and have his babies. So he kicked out my ex, providing her the money for an abortion. I don't know if any of you guys believe in karma, but I am certain that's what happened here. My wife wanted the money and didn't give a crap about anyone else. So that's literally what she got. Temporary riches from someone that didn't give a crap about her. I've since bought a new place and remarried. I thought I should share this story to inspire people, particularly men, who were betrayed by a woman that they trusted. As much as it hurts, we are strong enough to get through it. Men are meant to take the hardest crap dealt in the world. We don't even need much to keep on going. But if a woman fails you, just get another one. I know that sounds heartless, but I was able to do just that very thing. No matter what you're faced with, always be communicative and caring while knowing your own boundaries and what you deserve. That's how you just keep surviving and functioning. Opie, I am glad to hear that justice was served to your cheating wife. There may not be such a thing as two souls destined for each other, but as mature adults, we each have the chance and responsibility to wisely choose the partner we want to commit to and love, no matter what. The person that matches us as closely as possible, among other factors. And when it seems to be getting boring or difficult, you fight to rekindle the love and commitment that you found in each other. If there are things to talk about them. That's how you solve things that are causing problems, no matter how painful, humiliating, or uncertain it is. And if there aren't any jaw-breaking problems, and there's still love in the relationship, then there's no reason to betray. Them being bored, under stress, or tempted by another person certainly is not enough to put your loved one through a tragic life event they must overcome. I'm glad to hear you've overcome this extremely difficult time in your life. Remember, you are worthy of all the love and happiness you find. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.
I, 29 male, was dating my girlfriend, 25 female, at the time of my uncle's passing. He was like a father figure to me. So this loss hit me hard. I didn't have my father growing up, but his brother stepped in to be the example that I needed. When he died, I was stuck with this terrible feeling like he didn't get to teach me everything I needed to know. I felt lost. It was hard for me to function, and I knew I wasn't there for my girlfriend like I normally was. We used to go out often and make each other laugh, but neither of those things were happening. She wasn't afraid to share her disappointment in my behavior. She said I wasn't amounting to the man she needed to have by her side. Because of this, she suggested we take a break until I was over it. This was the last thing I wanted, and don't think I didn't realize how heartless my girlfriend was being. It was red flag central over here. But at this point, I had very little mental capacity to handle any deep, honest conversations. I could hardly formulate thoughts, but I knew I wanted her to be there for me. I wanted her to sleep over and take care of me until I saw hope in the future, but she didn't volunteer. She did the opposite by leaving me. I guess a part of me was too embarrassed to ask her to stay or show any sign of weakness, so I let her go. After my uncle's funeral, she asked if I was better yet. I told her no, and started to see how selfish and inconsiderate this girl was. A few weeks later, I hadn't heard much from her, but I assumed she was still my girlfriend. I wanted to ask her out on a date, but I was still really sad, and I knew she'd be able to sense it on me. Out of the blue, my friend from high school called me up. It had been years since I heard from her personally, but we were friends online. She got to the point right away and told me she just saw my girlfriend at a club with another guy. She named him, and I knew who he was. My girlfriend and he were very close in high school, but stopped talking after we got together. Now I was being told that my girlfriend was going around telling her friends that she and AP were best friends again. I called her and asked if she was seeing another guy. She admitted she was hanging out with AP, but it wasn't like they were seeing each other. She said he was there for her while I needed space. I told her I didn't need space. I needed her to come stay with me for a while, because I was lonely and needed support. She hesitated and awkwardly said she would be home soon, but she needed some time to gather her stuff together. 2 days later, I was still waiting, and she ghosted me. My high school friend called again and said she heard through the grapevine that my girlfriend spent the night at AP's house, where she went down on him after he did the same to her. Before I could even process this terrible news or decide what to do, my girlfriend walked through the front door with her stuff, acting like everything was normal and it was good to be home. I freaked out on her. I called her a bunch of names and said she was crazy for thinking she could play me like a fiddle, like I wouldn't find out what a waste of time she was. She cried and said what they did didn't mean anything. She just needed that relief and love from someone. I said I did too, but it wouldn't be from her ever again. I said I hated her for betraying me when I needed her most. She left dramatically, defending herself by saying she couldn't have known I was going to become so pathetic when my uncle died. Then she told me to grow up as she drove away. I really hated her by this point. She said and did things she'd never be able to take back. She goes a hopping 2 months before calling me, hyperventilating and crying, trying to make me feel pity and concern for her. I asked her why she was calling me, so she calmed down a little and said she just walked in on AP cheating on her with one of her friends. She bawled her eyes out as she told me I was right all along, that she should have been there for me when my uncle passed. She said she couldn't have possibly understood what I was going through because until now, she never experienced heartbreak. I said I was glad she got to experience heartbreak and asked her not to call me again. She yelled as I hung up and blocked her number. I've been doing great on my own since she called me. I had a rebound reunion with my old friend from high school and worked overtime for weeks to buy myself a dog. Thanks to this unpleasant experience, I know that I need a spouse who cares enough to stay by my side through it all, especially the hard times. Life isn't always peachy, so I might not try as hard to butter things up or sugarcoat it. I'll remain loyal and choose to love her. All I ask is that she does the same. OP, I am so sorry your girlfriend abandoned and cheated on you at a horrible time in your life. When you least needed and were least prepared to handle her betrayal, she did it. It's despicable of her to tell you that she'll be there only for you to hear that she slept over AP's house. As if that's not bad enough, she shows up and pretends everything is fine. That is a terrible, scary woman. She can't be trusted, and she needs several come-to-Jesus meetings to get up to speed on what it means to be a man's woman. Men need support just as much as women do. When a man loses someone close to him, his woman should be the first one in line to support him. During this time, the best thing she could do is take on a selfless and giving attitude for as long as it takes to help get her man through this. When he feels hopeful because of her love, support, or nurturing, he'll be able to give her what she needs. Anyone who wants to be in a relationship should go in with understanding, patience, and a willingness to compromise. I wish you the best of luck in your recovery and thank you for being an excellent example for us to follow. Now let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I started hanging out with each other as teenagers. We are the same age. At first, she was my best friend, but as we grew up, I started to believe she was my soulmate. Our hangouts became more like dates without the rest of our crew. After having intimate relations for the first time, we both wanted to get married. Each year of our marriage helped me to grow as a person. I was naturally shy and found it very hard to cope with change. For that reason, I didn't see myself ever traveling far from home for weeks at a time, but my wife added fearless adventure and hope into my life. We went to Hawaii, Canada, and Ireland. These were the top 3 places my wife wanted to see before she died, and we got to all of them before the age of 33. We used to go to clubs and stuff like that, but we started doing more athletic things to stay in shape. The thing we loved a lot and did the most frequently was mountain biking. My favorite part was getting home and sharing a shower and cup of tea together. We had several mutual friends we knew for years, and friends from each of our jobs. We would have a mix of friends over once a week for games and drinks. One night, one man in particular was invited. I didn't know it at the time, but he was AP. We both knew him since we were 14. This was the first time I'd seen him in a while, and he was acting particularly interested in my wife. He wanted to know all about what she was up to and her accomplishments at work. He was impressed and staring at her. The others noticed, but continued chatting amongst themselves. I was glaring at him. He commended on what an amazing cat she was. I took ownership of her and told him I knew I was the luckiest man on earth. As he took a sip from his glass, he mumbled something that sounded like, I must be too then. I asked what he said, but he played it off like it was nothing. While the men played Texas Hold'em, my wife and the women played dominoes in the living room. AP was extremely competitive with me. I felt like I either did something to tick him off, or he was jealous of me. He was furious when he lost, but my wife came in and patted his shoulder, assuring him there'd always be next time. He licked his lips and raised his eyebrows, like he wanted her next. I jumped up and asked what the heck that was. He just played dumb and swore that I must be a sore loser. I leaned over him, telling him that he was just ticked off that I had a woman he could only dream of. He jumped up, so we both started screaming in each other's face. Several of our friends, including my wife, separated and calmed us down. Outside, I was venting to my best friend about the things AP did and said, and how uneasy I felt around him. That's when I saw through the window. AP pulled my wife close to him, hip to hip, foreheads touching. She smiled before she pushed away playfully, only for him to follow her. She looked like she was being teased by someone she loved dearly. I was extremely disturbed. This moment haunted me for days. I tried to justify it any way I could, but it just didn't feel right. I laid awake one night at 3 a.m. until I decided to check her phone in the living room while she slept. I figured out her passcode and found my worst fears. All the evidence I needed was just waiting to be discovered on this little device she carried around 24/7. I never considered the possibility of her and AP having an affair, let alone one that was going on for 18 months. Her camera roll was filled with pictures of AP's junk, her in lingerie, parted lips, tongue sticking out, anything you can think of. Their messages spelled out everything, discussing their amazing sex, when they did it, how much they loved it, and how bad it would be if I found out. But that last part was just how my wife felt. AP wasn't worried at all. He was trying to convince her to tell me the truth so they could be together. He wanted her to live in his apartment, but she loved my house, and pointed out the fact that AP made less money than me. I couldn't believe she thought about these things, but not about how I'd feel if I knew she was cheating on me. It was like that didn't matter, because she planned on keeping me in the dark for as long as possible. After I got copies of their whole conversation, at least 100 screenshots and 10 pictures, and put her phone back on the nightstand, I laid wide awake on the couch. It felt like I forgot who I was when I found out my wife was cheating. I felt like a little boy who wanted to go home, but home wasn't there anymore. It was the worst feeling I ever experienced. I had to keep going. When she woke up in the morning, she was worried and concerned about me sleeping on the couch. She asked me a whole bunch of questions like, was I mad at her? Did she do something wrong? What happened? She's sorry, and so on. I didn't feel like anything she said to me was worth answering. I wanted to accuse her of so much that anything I said wouldn't do my pain justice, so I gave her the silent treatment. I refused to answer anything she said, so she started to freak out and say she didn't deserve this and stuff like that. I left the house to file divorce papers and contact a lawyer. He advised me to wait until she got served. That way, she'd be less prepared to defend herself or make up lies about me. I was home with her, sitting on the couch with the television off when there was a knock at the door. She was served. She looked at me with huge, watering eyes, very confused. She begged me for answers now. She got on her knees in front of me and wanted to know why. I gave in to her dramatic performance and told her she was nothing to me anymore. That's why I was divorcing her. I showed her the screenshots on my phone, yelling that she was nothing but a lying, cheating, ugly actress that doesn't deserve a man's trust. I promised her I knew that for a fact because I was the man that trusted her, and all it got me was years of my life gone, like a prison sentence with a ghost. Everyone we knew throughout our lives and in town found out about her affair and immediately cut her off or treated her differently. Now she was just the one that cheated on her husband and lost everything. She lost the house. She lost her friends. She lost the great life we had together. Now she just trolls Facebook and Instagram, watching the people she used to know in person. She comments on anything I post, asking me questions all the time about anything. She's desperate for an answer, but I never respond. OP, it's absolutely terrible that your wife cheated on you with a mutual friend that you both knew for years. It always hurts to hear stories like these because infidelity used to be much less common. A lot of women are being taught that it's okay to be selfish and demand what they deserve from their husband or man. Women should be taught that it isn't all about them. They aren't always right and men are meant to be men. A woman's natural role in the relationship is to provide what her man needs so that he can function properly. By doing her part for him, he in turn does his part for her. There's give and take that needs to occur, but none of these healthy exchanges can happen if selfishness and unfair demands persist. Always treat your spouse as an equal. Consider their feelings and the trust they give you to be more important than your own selfish wants and desires. I think you handled this as sensibly as you could, and I respect you. I'm glad the divorce went in your favor and that you still don't tell your ex anything. She doesn't need to waste any more of your time. I wish you the best of luck in life and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact. Welcome to Find Your Alpha, a channel dedicated to the betterment of men. Today we're going to go through a very intriguing story, a story about a young man who met and has been in a relationship with a really hot young woman who's starting off her career. Things were going very excellent for them according to him. They were progressing very quickly. They moved in together. He couldn't be happier. She appeared to be very happy, and then one day he finds out, lo and behold, that she cheated on him with a guy she just met at her local gym. So before we jump into the story, I wanted to introduce this new channel that's launching today. This is really the first video. The purpose of the channel is to create a community to improve the lives of men through shared experiences, knowledge, and learnings, and to enable men to enjoy the pleasures of a woman by preparing and protecting himself mentally, physically, and financially for the relationship. I've seen a lot of channels out there, and there's a lot of publications and so forth where you read about guys who are just walking away from women, and I think that's a big mistake because that's one of the greatest pleasures that God provided us is the body of a woman and enjoying her company. And the purpose of this channel is going to be to focus on what we need to do as men to prepare ourselves for that relationship so that we don't get our souls crushed, so we don't get hurt, so we don't lose our bank accounts, so we don't get an STD, and that's what this channel is going to be all about. So let's get into the story here today, and we'll talk more about this situation as we go through it. So this situation happened back in late 2019 at the time I, Dan, was 29 years old and my ex-girlfriend Meg was 23. We met about 10.5 months prior at a corporate reception and have been inseparable ever since. She was absolutely beautiful, fit, with gorgeous long brown hair and a bubbly personality, so she sounds really good. She had recently got a job as a marketing associate for a large consumer products company and seemed to be really enjoying the work. I am an IT data specialist for a Fortune 1000 company. I love my job and have been steadily moving up the company ladder. We had what I and everyone we knew thought was a perfect relationship. We were truly in love and actually made love at least once every day since our second date. So they're together 10 months, 10.5 months now, so they're still in the honeymoon period, but he's doing pretty good there on the love making once a day for 315 days, so that's pretty good. Things were progressing quickly in our relationship. You might want to hold your horses there, guy. You're moving pretty quick, and I asked her to move in with me after 8 months of dating. So he's smitten. He's moving quick. Our first 60 days of cohabitation had gone great, and I started thinking that I soon wanted to ask this woman to be my wife and the mother of my children. Wow. So he was bought in. He was definitely smitten. Then our world abruptly changed, and we're going to find out what happened here. I came home from work on a Friday, and Meg was sitting on our couch in her pajamas clutching a pillow, and it appeared that she had been crying. She had the day off, and I hadn't heard from her all day, which was totally out of character as we normally call and or text each other several times a day. So that's a big red flag there. However, when he came home, he found out she was sick. So, he probably didn't think too much of the fact that she didn't contact him during the day. She said that she started feeling ill after returning from the gym in the morning and has been on the couch all afternoon. So, hey, I caught a bug at the gym, but you're going to find out she didn't catch a bug. She actually caught some alien sperm at the gym. She described what sounded like flu-like symptoms and said she hoped to feel better soon as she couldn't take not being able to love me for too long. Since we thought she might have the flu, She insisted on sleeping on the couch and keeping a safe distance from me so that I didn't catch what she had. Throughout the weekend, she remained on the couch, only getting up to shower and use the bathroom. I brought her food and drink, and we spent time watching movies and talking all weekend. Throughout the entire weekend, she professed at least 30 times how much she loved me and that she loved me more than life itself. So she's laying it on thick here. Telling me she loved me was not unusual, but what was unusual is how many times she repeated this to me over and over on those 2 days. So that's another red flag. But again, in his mind, he's probably, didn't put two and two together, and obviously he didn't, because he's thinking, hey, I'm taking care of her and she's sick and therefore she's very appreciative. On Monday, she said she still wasn't feeling 100% and called off sick. She said she was going to call her doctor and see if she could get in for an exam. When I came home that evening, she said the doctor advised that she may be coming down with something and suggested taking it easy at home until her symptoms improved, and if they didn't improve in a day or two, to come back into the office. So, when you got a flu, the doctor, there's really not a heck of a lot they can do for you outside of get rest, drink fluids, all those things that you've heard about. Throughout the entire week, Meg remained on the couch in what I would call a malaise state, again, reiterating her love for me every time I was in her presence. I started to get worried, and on Thursday evening, I told her I think we need to contact her doctor and see if she could recommend a specialist that could pinpoint her issue. Meg said she was feeling a little better today and suggested we hold off on doing so for another day. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon, she called me at work to say she was feeling terrific now. Wow, she made a quick recovery and couldn't wait until I came home so that we could make love and cuddle all night. I was relieved that my prayers had been answered, and I was really looking forward to our time together that evening. I bet he was, he had gotten it every night for 315 nights. Now for the last week, he wasn't getting any, and now she's feeling good. She's all ramped up. He's thinking, man, this is going to be a great evening and a great weekend, but he's in for the shock of his life. When I arrived home, she greeted me at the door with a passionate kiss and asked that I hold her tightly, as she had missed not being in my arms for the past week. We were embracing near the kitchen counter, and her phone was sitting on the counter beside her purse. The phone rang, and she turned to look to see who was calling and saw it was her mother, and said she wanted to answer as her mother has been very worried about her. As she went to grab the phone, she knocked her purse off the counter onto the ground, spilling some of the contents. I signaled to her that I would pick it up so she could answer and talk with her mother. She moved into the kitchen to get a bottle of water from the fridge with her back towards me. She was joyfully talking to her mother about how great she was feeling now and that we were going to spend a very special night and weekend together to make up for lost time. Now, here's where things change. As I reached down to pick up her purse, I saw an envelope from a local clinic on the ground with what appeared to be her lab results. I thought nothing of it at first, since she had been to the doctor on Monday, but as I looked closer, I realized this was not a normal blood work report, but it was actually results from a comprehensive STI/STD test. Wow. As I stood up with her purse and test results in hand, she ended her call with her mother and turned to me with a big smile. I held up the test results and asked, "What is this?" Her demeanor immediately changed. She was shocked and silent, like the wind had been knocked out of her. I asked, "Why did you have comprehensive STI/STD testing completed? We've been together exclusively now for over 10 months. She said she had never had this kind of testing done before, and her doctor recommended it to rule out as a cause of her illness. So as you'll see here, this guy isn't buying it. He knows she's lying. He says, I knew deep down she was lying. I sternly said to her, Meg, please don't lie to me. Tell me the truth. She was silent, looking down, and I again said, Meg, tell me the truth now. With that, she fell to her knees and immediately began sobbing, stating that she cheated on me last Friday morning with a guy she met that day at her gym. Unbelievable. Now listen to this. She said she had been avoiding me for the last week until she got the test results back to ensure that she did not have an STI, and to ensure all of his sperm was out of her system before we were intimate again. So at least she had a conscience here, because a lot of these stories, you red woman goes out and cheats, and then she feels guilty and she comes right back and has unprotected sex with her boyfriend or her husband, exposing that boyfriend or husband to a potentially an STI or STD, and also exposing that boyfriend or a husband to the alien sperm from her affair partner, which is just totally disgusting. I was shocked, sickened, and I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I can understand that. I mean, you think, hey, this is the girl of my dreams. You know, everything's going great. We're so in love. And then she comes back and lays this on you. You just must feel like, you know, your world has just been crushed. I started to cry. Mistake there, but understandable. And all I could say to her was, why? Why, Meg? Why did you do this to us? We were so happy. You've destroyed us. You've destroyed me. Uncontrollably sobbing. She again said she was so sorry and didn't know why she did it. Yeah, I don't know why I did it. I was just in the gym and I went out to coffee with this guy. And the next thing you know, my panties just fell off. I mean, come on, you know why you did it. And it all happened spontaneously. Yeah, it was just all spontaneously. I angrily said, tell me everything that happened. You at least owe me that. And she does here. She continued sobbing and eventually composed herself and started telling me what happened. She said while she was working out, a guy who she had seen lifting free weights approached her, introduced himself, and asked if she would like to go out for coffee with him after her workout. She said she hesitantly accepted, but said she didn't know why. Yeah, you didn't know why. They went to a local coffee house in town and talked for over an hour. The guy is unemployed and lives in an apartment over a storefront just a few doors from the coffee house and spends a lot of time at the gym. So this guy is a typical gym rat. He sounds like a Chad type, unemployed, you know, and he, shot his shot at the gym, took a chance with this good-looking girl. And lo and behold, you're going to see he's going to go all the way within a matter of an hour, hour and a half. At the end of their meeting, he said he'd like to show her his apartment, and she accepted again, stating she didn't know why. You know, why lie? Why keep saying, I don't know why I did this? I don't know why I did this. You know why you did it. She said from there, one thing led to another, starting with kissing, then rubbing, then him performing oral sex on her, and then finishing up with him ejaculating inside of her. At that point, I became lightheaded and was on the verge of throwing up. She said the entire penetration took less than 2 minutes. So this guy was, obviously a premature ejaculator, and was the worst experience of her life. Like this made any difference. The guy says, Dan says, and after she immediately realized what she had done and became sick. So everybody's becoming sick about this situation. She said she ran into his bathroom and vomited, and then ran out of his apartment. On her way out, she told the affair partner that she was in a serious long-term relationship and this should have never happened. She said she wanted to forget the entire thing. The affair partner apparently never knew she was in a relationship and sent her a text right after her, or after she left, calling her a devious psycho bitch and stating he would never have tried anything with her if he had known she had a boyfriend. He sent a second text right after stating, I'm blocking your number. Please don't call or attempt to speak to me again. She showed me the text from him that were time-stamped for 11:38 and 11:51 a.m. last Friday, which lines up with, when she said she got sick. I angrily said this doesn't that he didn't know. In fact, it makes it worse for you, which it does. So that's the end of video number 1. Have you experienced a situation like this where you had a girlfriend or a significant other or your wife and lo and behold, just one day, she spontaneously cheats with somebody she just met, whether it was a plumber, whether it was a cable guy that came to your house, whether it was somebody she met at Starbucks, whether she was, checking out at the local grocery store and got the hots for the bag boy. Do you have a story like that? If you do, put it in the comments. Let me know what you think about this guy's story. And if you enjoyed what you've heard, please like this video and share it with your friends. We want to get these learnings out to as many people as possible. And if you like what you heard and want to hear more stories like this and also more self-help articles for men, please subscribe to this channel and look forward here to the follow-up video where you'll hear how Dan handled this situation, where he's at now, and also we'll discuss some key learnings and some key takeaways of this situation. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll talk